Thank you. This also is very important in my state. As I mentioned, we have the highest rate of international adoptions in the country. We have families that have opened their hearts and their homes to kids from every country, from Vietnam to Guatemala to Nepal to Haiti. My background is county attorney. For 8 years, I oversaw the lawyers who worked with foster care and adoptions. We made it a huge priority to try to speed up the process for kids to be adopted from foster care. Right now in our country, nearly 400,000 children are living without permanent families in the foster care system. Over 100,000 of these children are eligible for adoption, but too many of them will languish for years in foster care, oftentimes with very good families for them, but obviously a permanent home is what you want. We talked about international adoptions around the world. There are estimated to be nearly 18 million orphans who have lost both parents and are living in orphanages or on the streets that have, again, a permanent home. Senator Blunt talked about some examples from his own state. I use one example. When the Hatch family, Emerson Hatch, was one of these children, an orphan, started the process to adopt her from India in 2000. Emerson was one of 300 kids living in an orphanage built to house 34 children. The Indian government refused to release her, and the family had to endure a 2-year wait and an earthquake and a contested election in India before they were finally able to get her out of India with 1 minute to spare before her passport expired. She was malnourished, she was 2 years old, but only weighed 14 pounds and was in poor health. But with a lot of love and the help of the Adoption Medicine Clinic at the University of Minnesota, Emerson and the Hatch family are thriving. She's in high school, and the family is passionate about giving orphans permanent, loving homes. And so there are many things that this Senate can do. The first is, as Senator Blunt has explained, leading efforts when countries put up barriers for no good reason. Obviously, sometimes you'll have legal issues in countries with corruption or other reasons that there is a pause in adoptions. But when countries are putting up barriers for no good reasons and for reasons that are fairly transparent, we must lead and work with other senators across the aisle to get this done. The second is legislation. We've had a number of successful bills passed in the Senate. The bill I'm probably proudest of is something that I did with actually Senator Sessions, Senator Inhofe, which was to allow older siblings to come in internationally when a younger sibling had been adopted. What was happening is kids would turn 17 after holding the family together as the oldest sibling, and then they would no longer be eligible for adoption. We had a family out of the Philippines, 9 children. Oldest kid helped them together in an orphanage, oldest 2 kids, and then they turned too old to be adopted. That family, I will never forget, the McCorrises came to me and they said, well, we have these choices. We can adopt the 7 kids and leave the 2 behind. It was like a Sophie's choice. Or we can leave them all there because we want them to stay together, or you can change the law. That was the discussion. So I worked with my colleagues, and I'll never forget the McCorrises came with pictures of these children on their iPads and went around the offices to House members and senators that were holding up the bill and showed them to their staff members, and the staff members would call our staff crying and said, okay, well, we won't hold it up anymore. And we were able to get that passed, and I was able to be there, Senator Blunt, with that family in their home, a farmhouse that they've expanded, and it was like a Philippines version of The Sound of Music. And they're an incredible family. I just talked to them a few months ago, doing well. So this is, I would argue to our colleagues, a bipartisan area in Congress, something we can do across the aisle, but it's also something where we can make significant difference, not just in one family's lives, but in many, many families' lives. And so I want to thank you for your work and your continued leadership in this area.